All right, good evening, everyone. Dr. Randall Gates, board certified chiropractic neurologist, also a chiropractic physician at Gatesway to Health, streaming on YouTube and Facebook at the same time. Tonight, we're talking about concussion again. I've done a number of broadcasts on concussion, and we've talked about post-traumatic stress disorder, and we've talked about depression. Tonight, we're talking about why you should have your eye movements checked if you've had a concussion. And this literature actually comes from the pediatric literature on concussion. So if you're a parent of a young hockey player, football player, soccer player, and your child has suffered a concussion, you're worried about them and whether they'll recover or not, then you probably want to have your children's eye movements tested. And hello to everyone who's joining. I know it's late at night, but we may as well talk about this now better than later. So why are the eyes so pivotal in talking about concussion and the brain? And here's my sample of the brain. And the brain is very complicated, and the brain for coordinating eye movements actually requires many different centers in the cerebral cortex, the frontal cortex up here, as well as the cerebellum if I rotate the brain model down here. And researchers are even finding that if your child has a premorbid history, meaning before the concussion, of motion sickness, then that can be a predictive factor of your child not getting better. And so it's very important to look at these types of things and anticipating whether your child will recover from concussion or not. And we just lost our Facebook connection feed, so we'll keep going on YouTube and I'll post that to Facebook. Needless to say, the neurology of eye movements is one of the most well-studied aspects of brain function. The neurology of eye movements has been studied at many different neuroscience and neurological centers across the country and across the world. It's been compiled by a kind of a premier neurologist or group of neurologists from Johns Hopkins. The seminal book, The Neurology of Eye Movements by Lee and Z, is the reference there. And you'll be astounded that if you actually get this book and you read each chapter, most of the chapters have upwards of 1,000 references behind each chapter. And there's one chapter, for example, just on eye head movements. There's a chapter on just quick eye movements called saccades. There's a chapter on smooth pursuit. So if you're following a target from side to side, nice and smooth, that's called a smooth pursuit. As you look at telephone poles driving down the freeway, that's another type of test called an optokinetic test. Tons of references on that. So all these references basically come from neuroscience studies on the brain where they actually may have somebody looking at different targets moving around and they see what parts of their brain light up. And so we know with a high degree of certainty based on how your eyes move what's happening with your brain. So from that came some research largely done out of Canada by a neurosurgeon by the name of Dr. Ellis. He did 2 seminal studies on this issue where he looked at pediatric concussion patients and then he put them through a battery of eye movement tests, and he found that if they scored abnormally or if they became nauseous with the testing, that then they were more likely to develop post-concussion syndrome. So anyways, and I'm getting comments from our Facebook fans, why am I up so late? And I'm so late because I'm excited about this topic, in all honesty, and about what we're doing at Gatesway to Health. So what does this mean to you? You're the parent of a concussion patient, or you've had a concussion and you're going from doctor to doctor and your brain scans are normal and your blood tests are normal and your doctors are scratching their head and they don't know why you're still suffering. Well, one of the first places you need to look is having your eye movements tested. This is commonly done in functional neurology offices. We do it in both of our offices at Gatesway to Health. Sometimes you can get this testing in ear, nose, and throat or audiology offices, but the interpretation of the eye movement testing may not be correct when it's just done in an ear, nose, and throat practice. I'm not condescending to the ENTs. They're looking at it from an inner ear perspective. You have to have somebody who's going to take all this information and put it together from a neurological perspective relative to your concussion. So the net sum of this is that, in my opinion, eye movement tests should be part of the standard workup for concussion patients, in addition to neuropsychological testing if deemed necessary, as well as the most current brain imaging modalities that I've talked about in other broadcasts. If you've had a brain MRI and you're told you're normal, frankly, in my office, that doesn't mean anything to me except that you didn't have a bleed, or you didn't have a stroke, or you didn't have, not a stroke, but a skull fracture, something like that. We need to look at the microstructural architecture of the brain, and we're finding that's so important with specialized MRI modalities to see how dense different areas of the brain are, what are the wires connecting each hemisphere doing. And then you put all that together with the eye movement testing, and you have a pretty clear picture of what's going on in someone's brain after a head injury and why they're not recovering. And then from that, we can create a detailed action plan for that person's specific problem based on what we find from all those tests. Also, keep in mind, inflammation is certainly important, but so many of you are taking fish oil or you're on the paleo diet and you're still not better. And if you're not better, it's because parts of your brain are still not firing right. They may be out of rhythm. Maybe the wires have been damaged. Maybe you've lost density in certain areas of your brain from the concussion because brain cells actually started to shrivel or die. And so those are the areas that really have to be paid attention to. So tonight's kind of quick, and the reference for this, I cited Dr. Ellis, but it's also from Clinical Journal of Sports Medicine, 2018, March. And this study came largely from the Philadelphia Children's Hospital. I believe they looked at 432 pediatric concussion patients, so pretty large sample size in the concussion world. So this is good data. Tell me what you think. Share with your friends. Like our Facebook page and subscribe and all that stuff you're supposed to say. Okay, thank you, everyone.